Well, hello and welcome again to our Tales from the War Room here in Persia, in the countryside, in the War Room. I thought tonight I'd take a little look at some of the books that inspired me to get involved with wargaming from a really young age. And I'd like to begin with a book that I didn't own, a friend of mine owned, and it's this one, Wargames by Donald Featherstone. It was owned by a friend of mine called Chris when I was about 13 or 14 years old, and I was absolutely blown away by this little book. I thought it was absolutely astonishing. We had lots of Airfix toys, we were making lots of kit and really enjoying ourselves, but what we didn't have was a set of rules to wargame with, and we were really keen to. And this little book included these Lionel Tar rules, which were just great to play games with. And this was my introduction to wargaming. This is what really got me going. And I asked my father for a copy of this book for my Christmas when I was 14 years old, and I didn't get it. He went out and he got me what I think he thought was the right book, and it was called Advanced Wargames by Donald Featherstone. And this book proved actually to be even better than the first Donald Featherstone book, because unlike the first one, it contained an organisation chart. Now, this is something that I was really interested in. I think a lot of us as wargamers really like Warbats and getting things done in a way that approximates the real thing. And it had this brilliant approximation of a 1944 Coldstream Guards battalion. And I was really struck by that and really excited to use that as a way of setting up my own armies. Now, that particular Warbat took an awful lot of Airfix figures, and I ended up with a battalion when I was 14 years old that contained all kinds of weird and wonderful troops, including some 8th Army, some original Airfix modern British infantry, and then some later figures as other ones became available. So these two books from the great man himself, Donald Featherstone, were the ones that really got me kick-started into wargaming. And as I got more and more interested in the organisation of units, I then came across this book, John Sandars, An Introduction to Wargaming. And this book was again fascinating because it had lots of ways of organising your armies, and particularly these pictures, really detailed analysis of how you could represent, particularly in this case, Western Desert armies. And he had all sorts of systems in this great book for how you would fight that. If you take a look at the cover, you can see the bits of the kit that he was using. So again, a very valuable book on the road to wargaming. And I suppose the final book that really intrigued me as a younger person was a Charles Grant book, Napoleonic Wargaming. You could only see this in the local library. I didn't have a copy of it, but I used to borrow it excessively, and the librarian was quite amused by that. And what I loved about this book was it was the first time I'd seen really interesting, good-looking terrain. Up until then, the Don Featherstone books were black and white photographs, sand tables, plasticine hills, funny little buildings, all that sort of thing. This looked like the real deal. This looked like what the future of wargaming might be. And it was so proved to be true, because when you look at the kind of terrain that we go for now, the kind of stuff that inspires us in the magazines and the glossy books and the rule sets, it's that kind of terrain. So Charles Grant really anticipated with the photographs in this book the sort of terrain that would inspire all of us, I think, to get better and better at making terrain. I suppose it's because of these books I started going to wargame shows. And at the shows you started to meet fellow wargamers and look at what they were doing and find other interesting ways of doing the terrain. And then of course started buying the magazines. First of all, Miniature Wargaming, edited by Duncan McFarlane, and there was some really good early Peter Gilder stuff in that. We'll look at those in a later video. But for me, these are the little books that really got me going, and I'll put proper reference below here so that you can find out exactly where these books are if you've not come across them before. They're all out of print, I guess, but they'll always be available on eBay, I imagine. So keep wargaming and keep being inspired. Be interested to see in the comments what's inspired you. And please do subscribe. It'd be great to have more people following the video.